welcome you all to another episode of Analytics Week Leadership Podcast. Today we have with us DeCosmo, who is a Chief Analytics Officer for Enova International. A brief intro. DeCosmo is the Chief Analytics Officer of Enova International, where he leads a multidisciplinary analytics team providing end-to-end data and analytics services to Innova's global online financial service brands, and delivering real-time predictive analytics services to clients through Innova's decisions. Prior to Innova, Joe served as director and practice leader of advanced analytics for West Monroe Partners and held a number of executive positions at Harvey Global Solutions and the Alliant Group. He is also immediate past president of Chicago chapter for American Statistical Association and serves on the advisory board of University of Illinois Chicago's College of Business. So, Joe, welcome to the podcast.
Yeah, thank you, Vishal. I'm glad to be here.
So, I think definitely a very good background. So, love to know what all I have missed. So, it's a very brief snippet of your long career through data and analytics. So, love to know your journey, your current role, and all that. So,
Sure.
if you can shed some light on that.
Yeah, sure. So yeah, that is an abbreviated version of my journey here. Started my career actually in 1987 at Argonne National Laboratory here in Chicago. So I've been at analytics for a long time. I was a graduate student studying economics at the time with focus on econometrics, which is very natural, obviously, lead into predictive analytics and advanced analytics. Did that for a few years, and then I changed gears, decided to get into industry, and got into the telco industry, where I was doing pricing and forecasting work, and then from there got into marketing analytics and analytic consulting. So really started my analytic consulting career in the early 90s, which led to starting my own business called DeCosmo Associates that I ran for 10 years and sold to the Alliant Group in 2005. So, I've been in pseudo-academic research at Argonne, then into private industry, and then into consulting for really the last 20 years, ultimately landing here at Enova in January of 2014.
Interesting, definitely. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now let's talk about your role with Enova International. So you are Chief Analytics Officer there. So what does that really mean? What does that encapsulate? What do you do there?
Yeah, so analytics here at Enova is really a core of our business. So we make loans online in the U.S. and then 5 countries around the world. All of it is based on our ability to accurately predict risk and credit risk in particular accurately. So analytics is really the core of our products, the core of our service, coupled with really state-of-the-art technology for the online sort of e-commerce experience. So my role as Chief Analytics Officer is to ensure that we have the right teams and data and models in place to be able to do that. It starts with fraud prevention. So as an online lender, we have fraudsters that are visiting us every day. So we have to have solid analytics to fight fraud and verify that our borrowers are legitimate. Then through the credit and lending decision, all the way through the ultimate customer service we provide to our customers on an ongoing basis. It's a large team. I have 52 folks. It's the second largest team here at Enova. Our software engineering team is the largest, about twice the size, and then analytics is the second largest team. The CAO role is new. It did not exist before I got here at Enova, but analytics was always a core part of the business.
Interesting. So I think you discussed about credit risk and fraud prevention. So what exactly is like? So what's Chief Analytics Officer's role in that? So would you? So are you the one who approves the models? Or are you the one sort of who dictates the business problems? And so if you can shed some light on that, that will be awesome.
Yeah, sure. So it's my first role is to make sure we have a good handle and line of sight to the business problems and the challenges that each of our brands face, right? We have 11 brands around the world that we support. And so making sure I understand their needs well, both today and looking out into the future, and then making sure we have the right people and data and technology in place to be able to solve those. Once the actual modeling work and analytics work is being done, we have leaders below me on the team who make sure that models are reviewed and deployed accurately, and that the problems are being solved as we expected. I keep oversight over all of that and have responsibility for some of the policies we put in place. But the day-to-day work, then the teams are then engaging with our business owners to get the analytics and the models and the data deployed.
Interesting. And how much of your role is outfacing versus infacing? Like how much of your activity you really focus on helping, say, Innova's client versus helping Innova itself?
Yeah. So I'd say that most of my time is spent internal, making sure that we're supporting our 11 brands as best we can and continuing to grow and grow those businesses profitably and effectively. So that's the majority of my time that I spend. However, we went public 2 years ago, so we're now a publicly traded company. We also have a analytics as a service brand called Enova Decisions, which maybe we can talk about a little bit as well. So I spend some of my time as well talking to investors, talking to other folks that are looking at Enova from an investment perspective, and then also at Enova Decisions, talking to folks who are interested in working with us for analytic solutions.
Interesting. So yeah, so why don't we talk about Innova Decisions? Because I think I was briefly researching on the website, and I came across this, and love to know what Innova Decision is and what's your role in that is. That will be awesome.
Yeah. So really, it's really exciting for us. So we launched Innova Decisions right in January of this year. So it's our newest brand, and it is our what we're trying to do there is to offer our analytic and technology expertise to other companies as a service around predictive analytics and real-time decision making. So if you think about Enova, we're a 12-year-old company. We've grown up to be a publicly traded large international company with 11 brands around the world. We've built really world-class analytics and a world-class infrastructure for deploying and acting on those models in real time with customers. And so Enova Decisions is now us taking that capability and really commercializing it and offering up to others as well. Been very successful so far. We've got a handful of clients that have already signed on with us and are in production, and a few others that we're in early stage of onboarding them and getting their models built and them running in production as well. So really exciting for us. Gives us another way to think about our analytics and how we build and deploy analytics, not only for ourselves, but for other companies.
And is there any sweet spot when it comes to sort of what Innova Decisions can cater to? Like, is there any sweet spot of like industry vertical or horizontal that you guys care?
Yeah, so there are a few industry verticals that we are initially engaging in, but more broadly, what we're focused on is wherever there's a real-time decision that needs to be made with a customer, right? So if you're a telco company and maybe a wireless company, and at some point their contract's coming up for renewal, you need to make a decision about a new contract or about a retention, to be able to do that in real time while you're on live with the customer. That's something we want to be a part of, and we think we can support. So really it's all about a real-time customer decision, customer interaction, and supporting that. Having said that, clearly lending, so our heritage and legacy is in lending. So we're obviously talking to folks in the lending industry, how we can help them. and taking advantage of our credit expertise and fraud expertise. And then a few other industries, telco is one that we're very interested in and have a few engagements going right now. Primarily wireless telco, but it's an area that's we think is very rich for real-time predictive analytics and decision making.
Interesting. And so is it kind of a center of excellence for data analytics solutions, or it's like a product tool that someone could use from the architecture framework point of view?
Yeah, you're talking about Enova Decisions.
Yes.
Yeah. So Enova Decisions is really a service, right?
Okay.
We offer it as a analytics as a service, as a transactional service. So we're not seeking to be an analytics department for a company. What we're seeking to be is a partner to take advantage of a real-time infrastructure that's already been built out and deploy that for your business, so your business can take advantage of it. But we're not seeking to be an analytics department for our clients.
Okay. Well, I think definitely it's definitely good to know whenever any business decide to sort of bundle up their best practices and offer them as a service and product to the client, and that will be really helpful. So
and
I
we
do
think,
appreciate
just one last comment to make on that is that, we've invested, years and millions of dollars to get to this infrastructure, right? And so it's a big effort, right? If a company doesn't have, if real-time analytics and real-time decision-making isn't part of a company's service right now and capability right now, it's a big effort and a big investment to build that out. And so that's, the other conversation we have with our clients is that we've got the service and the infrastructure built. Now you can take advantage of it, and you don't have to go through the multi-year, multi-million-dollar build that we went through for our own business.
Interesting. That's interesting. So one thing that definitely I would be interested in is as a analytics executive, right? So what are some of the depths and the breadths of the decision making that you do, right? So what are some of the like how deep do you indulge and sort of how broad you go in your current role?
Yeah. So in my role, the decisions I'm really focused on are a couple things. One is making sure that we're clear in our priorities and focused on the right projects for the business and the projects that are most impactful to our business partners, our brands here at Enova. So that's number one. So really focus and prioritization. Number two is making sure we have the best talent we can get, right? So we're here in Chicago. We have a large analytics team here. We're becoming more well-known as an analytics employer here in the city, and making sure that we've got the best team on the field that we can get to provide and the analytics that we need going forward. So that I'm heavily involved in recruiting and staffing for the teams and making sure we have the right, not just the right amount of folks, but the right types of folks in their roles. And then the last piece is really, I would say, technology and data, right? Making sure we've got the right technology that we need to do our jobs well and provide service well. And then always on the lookout for new and interesting sources of data that can add value to our decision making. So think of fraud as an example. Fraud's an area where there's constantly new data sources coming available, new vendors coming available. We want to make sure that we're taking time to look at those data sources and testing them and figuring out, finding things that can add value to our analytics for our brands.
Interesting. No, I think that's definitely a good point. So I think one thing that I do hear that we do hear about nowadays is chief analytics officer, chief data officer, and data scientist or chief data scientist. So like I want to have your perspective on what do you think these word or these roles mean to you or from your lens. Um, So if you can sort of shed some light on that, that would be awesome.
Yeah, sure. It's interesting because you see the roles more and more coming up, um, but what's also interesting to me is you see a lot of different organizational structures where a chief data officer may report to the chief information officer, or the chief technology officer, or the chief analytics officer may report to the chief marketing officer. You see a lot of things like that. Here at Enova, I report directly to the CEO. So we are our own department, and I'm an equal member of the executive team with the other officers of the company. So having said that, I think those roles, whether you call it a CDO or CAO, I think the roles are here to stay. I think it's more important than ever to have a member of the executive team that is focused on the data a company has and how that data gets used for the business. So I think you're going to see more and more of these roles, and they're here to stay. And I personally believe they should report directly to the CEO and be an equal member of the executive team. That it's hard to find a business today where data and then getting value out of that data through analytics is not a critical part of the business going forward.
Right.
So that's my view. I think we're still evolving, and companies are sort of figuring that out, but I think the pace is definitely picking up.
Well, I think that's well said. And even like when we talk to a lot of businesses, we hear a lot about this entanglement of chief analytics officer, chief data officer, and chief data scientist, and who reports to who and how the data munching happens, and who owns the analysis, who owns the data. So that's it's a big cultural battle. So before I get into the cultural aspect of it, so like from your perspective, right? So who do you own the data, or you have to interact with, like, do you guys have chief data officer or chief data scientist, forever that matters, like, and you engage with them, or you pretty much take the data under your belt, which is also in some of the companies that's a model too.
So we do not have a chief data officer also. So in my role as CAO, I also own what we call data services, which is data warehousing. People think about that more traditionally. And then business intelligence, as well as all the advanced analytics and predictive analytics we need for fraud, credit, et cetera. So I own the data, the data from end to end. However, in a company like ours, and most sort of e-commerce companies, we're essentially an e-commerce, tech company at the end of the day. Data really exists in two places, right? We have data. Our data exists in our front-end systems for customer support and customer interactions, and then it exists in the back-end systems for business use, right? So data in the front end and the engineering and responsibility for that data, it resides with our chief technology officer and our software engineering teams. We then take that data, we consume that data out of the production systems into a data infrastructure for business use, and that's what I own from that point forward. It works very, very well, and it's been a very successful, that's new for us since I got to Enova, and that's worked very, very successfully for us. And the key to that working well is having a tight integration and connection with the front end engineering teams. So just as they have a team of data engineers on the front end, they work directly with our data engineers on the back end, so that everything is seamless, and changes on the front end don't break things on the back end, and vice versa.
Interesting. So now let's get into the one of the more sort of primal aspect in having a successful data and analytic execution strategy is to having the culture, right? Fixing the culture problem. How, like, what are some of the challenges that you see on the cultural perspective that sort of you have to overcome, and sort of some of the best practices that how you have overcome that, and I think that will be good to know.
Yeah. So I'd say first of all, and I always tell my peers this when I'm out at conferences and other places or when I'm speaking, is that I consider myself incredibly fortunate to be at Enova. Enova is a place where analytics is one of the cores of the business. Analytics and technology, those are the cores of the business, and it has been that way since the beginning, 12 years ago. Everyone at Enova understands and appreciates the value of analytics, and we're involved in virtually every decision that is made individually with our customers and broader decisions in the business. So I'm in a culture here that just embraces analytics, overall. I like to say that we have an analytics team, but really we're all analysts at Enova. Everybody is focused on data and answering questions through analysis and not through intuition. So that's number one. I'm very fortunate there. But having said that, in my consulting career, I think the biggest challenges you see are just this battle between folks who rely on deep business knowledge and intuition versus those who want to make decisions based on what the data tells us. And I think while that divide still exists, I think it's getting less. I think both sides are appreciating each other a little more, but that you can see that cultural tug of war, I think, still in a lot of companies. You also have, I think, challenges around just organizationally and politically, where companies can't get really clear yet on who owns what, right? Who owns the data, who owns the analysis of that data, who owns the decision making based on that data. So I think there's some organizational challenges folks still have to figure out for sure. In terms of what I see works well, are a couple of things. One is I always tell folks, and my advice is always to, when you're starting in an analytics leadership role, or you're starting an analytics team, is to think big but start small, right? So have a big vision, have a vision for analytics and where you want to go with analytics, but start very tactically with your business partners and find projects that number one can be solved with data and with analytics, but also would have a meaningful material impact on the business, and find those projects and execute those and deliver on those and start to build some momentum for the analytics function and the analytics role. It's sort of a bottoms-up, kind of a grassroots approach, which I believe works much better than top-down. Let's sort of identify a big project, enterprise-wide project as the starting point and get that solved, and then we'll solve all these business problems along the way. I think the other way works much better. Right. The other thing I would say is you have to get your peers and the business to believe in and adopt a test and learn mindset. Is that analytics at the end of the day is all about building, testing a solution, iterating on that solution, and sort of driving incremental value over time rather than the big splash. Everyone wants the big quick win, but that doesn't always happen that way, right? And so I think what I always say to my team and others outside is you have to get the mindset of there's no failures, there's just results, right? That if you try something and it doesn't work, that doesn't mean you failed, doesn't mean that the solution failed. It just means now you have to think about what do you do next. So it's thinking like a scientist, thinking like an inventor, who looks at a failure as a learning to do something different next, right? And so that's a big cultural shift I think a lot of companies have to make. And to get comfortable with that not everything's going to work, not everything's going to be a success off from the start. And so adopting that iterative test and learn mindset and getting others to understand it is really, really critical.
And what are some of the? So I think again, very well put. Because start small, show your success, and then I think from that build on your reputation. I think that's you couldn't have said any better on that. But I think one thing that we definitely do hear about from the folks from the bottom up approaches. Hey, my leadership is not on the same page. Like I want to use data for decision making, but many times they are the bottleneck or sort of their adoption of these new capabilities because every day comes with its own new keyword that these guys have to cope up with. So now, and businesses cannot just move on like on a single day basis. So how to sort of so what are some of the ideas or thoughts that you have to convince the leadership on sort of getting okay. And I think you rightly put that having that test mentality that hey, test it out and then don't sort of be stuck on the failures because that's all learning. But like what are some of the things that you could suggest to leaders to sort of adopt these capabilities and give sort of folks or create this bottom up culture of like data driven being data driven.
Yeah, it's a great question, and I actually think some of it has to do with, you know, that first of all, it starts with the leader, right? The leader has to buy into this idea that a series of small projects um, will get you to an end result more quickly than one big monster project, right? So that's number one. I think that they have to buy into that. The way I've seen it, the way we've done it here, and actually our example of on the data side, we have a very good example of this. It's important that the leader be able to lay out what the big picture vision is going to be, right? So what do you want? What's your end state that you're after in 12 months, 24 months? And then work with your team to identify a series of projects and engagements you can have with the business side that support, that move you along that roadmap to the end state. So what we had, our example here at Enova is we wanted to build a new data warehouse for the company. A few attempts have been made at this in the past, sort of the traditional top-down, we're going to design the perfect data warehouse that solves everybody's requirements and all the business needs. And then we're going to build it. We're going to come back to you in 24 months, have it, or 18 months, whatever it is, and here it is. Voila, your data warehouse is here and built. That was tried a few times and it failed. What we did was we took a very different tact starting in the summer of 2014. I sat down with our data services team and the leadership, and we said, where do we want to be in 12 months? We wanted to have what we call the enterprise information store. So we don't even call it a data warehouse here at Enova. We don't want to use those terms because there's a little bit of legacy behind that.
Right.
And so we want to get to a point where we've got an information store where we can look at all of our businesses and our data in one place and have consistent data, consistent measurements, KPIs, dashboards, etc. Then we backed up and we said, okay, to get there, let's identify a series of projects where we're solving business stakeholder problems for them, delivering value to the business at each step of the way, but not painting this grand scheme. We knew how all these projects would snap together at the end into a enterprise information store and dashboards, etc. But we never sort of made the business stakeholders aware of that. We just focused on solving their problems, right? So they got a data mart, they got their reports, they got their dashboard in 6 weeks. Then they're happy. Now we move on to the next. So make one team happy, get their stuff built out, move to the next team, get that built out. And we knew when we knocked off enough of these teams and enough of these projects that we'd be able to snap this together into the large information store, the enterprise information store. And so that's the approach we took. So we had an end state and an end goal, and we knew ourselves what individual projects we wanted to pursue to get to that end state, and then we executed against that.
No, actually, that is
business owners got value. Business owners got value along the way, and then we got to where we wanted to be at the end of the 12 months.
I think that's a perfect playbook. I think this is one of the very good playbook to follow, to sort of take the businesses with you and create small goals and start delivering everyone. And I think so, keeping the high road, taking the high road, as well as sort of keeping sort of these small deliverables or small successes along the way. I think that's a beautifully put. So
What's interesting
now,
is
yeah,
that
sorry.
one last comment on that is we had our big roadmap for the team.
Yeah.
We never published that roadmap.
Oh,
We didn't
interesting.
publish it to the executive team. We didn't, make a big splash and a big announcement at the start. We kept that roadmap to ourselves, and we knew at each step, we knew where we were at on that roadmap. And then at the end, we announced the system, right? Our announcement at the end was, we have an enterprise information store. It wasn't that we're building one. And so it was,
Nice.
it worked very, very well and got adoption, and now it's just building on itself. It's been a huge success here at
Interesting.
Enova.
Interesting. No, I think definitely a good strategy to follow. So now let's talk about the industry level perspectives, right? So
Yeah.
basically, you deal with some client work or some clients as well. So definitely interested in learning about what are some of the challenges that that some businesses that you come across are facing, and sort of how like how an analytics is solving those problems. Like what are some of the challenges that you're seeing from for their adoption of these capabilities?
Yeah, so in terms of challenges of adoption of these capabilities, I see really a couple of key challenges. One is um, just the competition for talent is higher than it's ever been. Certainly in my almost 25-year plus career, it's higher than it's ever been. Competition for analytics talent and data science talent. So that's number one. You have to be aggressive in recruiting and getting your message out. And for me, it's about becoming I want to become an employer of choice, right? I want analytics professionals in Chicago to think about Enova as a place they want to be, right? So it helps our recruiting. So that's number one. Talent is always a challenge, and anyone, whether you're mature in this space or just building it out, is going to face that challenge. The other thing, I think a lot of companies just have infrastructure challenges, right? So they've got legacy systems and legacy processes and other things that they have to overcome to really get to state-of-the-art analytics and real-time decisioning and all those kind of things that I think modern business requires. And then the last piece, I think, is there's so much technology out there now, is figuring out how to be focused on what you want to achieve, and then sort of keeping the noise out so you can really focus on the technologies that help you the most and move you forward. But it's quite astonishing these days how much technology and tools and different ways of doing analytics and building analytics infrastructure these days. Much more complex than in the past. Tools are greater,
Right.
but you have a lot more to choose from, and a lot more choices to make.
I think that definitely some good points, because I think one thing that we also hear from our end a lot is some of the anxiety that businesses share is that how could they basically expanding. So how to get started. So if you're a business, you want to do something, what are and these like they are roles that you can hire for, they are sort of capabilities that you could acquire, but many times businesses are not even sure how successful these capabilities are, because these are like very long term plans, and they don't sort of adhere well to their short term goals and successes. And many of us are, as a human, we sort of are very short term goal focused people, so
Yeah.
it's very difficult for sort of many of the professionals to sort of be that far sighted and say, hey, okay, I need a data scientist, or I need at least. So I think one thing definitely that we see a lot is this council that businesses say, okay, let me lend my own people and sort of add some charter, and they'll do some kind of data
Yeah.
munching, and then from there on, let the council bubble up. So what's your perspective on that? Like, what are some of the hacks that a very early sort of early in its game business could adopt to sort of start building their data driven capabilities?
Yeah. So I mean, you can probably guess from some of my other answers. I mean, I always sort of err towards being more pragmatic than not, and so I always tell folks, and I used to tell folks in my consulting days, that you really need to work backwards. So start with, what is the business problem you're trying to solve, and what answer are you seeking? And then if you have that answer, how will you use it in your business? So understand sort of the end state first. Understand that well. Then work backwards from there. Okay, given that end state, what kind of analytics do I need? Do I even need a predictive model? Maybe not. Maybe you just need some descriptive insights to be able to achieve that outcome. Then what data do I have to work with? What data do I need? And what gaps do I have in that data? The last piece, really the last question I think when you're starting this way that you really should address is the technology, the methodology, those kind of things, right? And often what I see is that folks work the other way around. They want to focus first on, my data's a mess, I have all this data, I need to build an infrastructure that fixes that. Then I'm going to need to build models. Don't know what models I need yet, but I'm going to need to build some models. So I need I need to hire some folks who have that capability, or find someone who can do that. And they sort of get to the business problem last, or the business application last. And I always say, flip that on its head, right? Flip it around, work backwards from the business need and how that answer will be used in the business, and then work backwards from there. But more, I have to tell you, I see it happening still, happening the other way around. Folks are figuring out, do I need, open source tools and a Hadoop cluster before I even know what the problem is, right? What the problem is, or how the business is going to use it. Yeah,
I think very well put, and we see that a lot. I think definitely it's a very nicely put. So now let's talk about some of the trends, right? So some of the things that fascinates you, or you actually very optimistic about, or very pessimistic about. So I think I definitely want to have your perspective on some of the overused technologies that you say, hey, it's way overused, and now let's get past that. So do you have any perspective on that?
Well, I don't know if it's technology as much as just sort of language and terms. I think you can probably sense. I mean, big data, I think, is a term that's kind of overused now, and really has become, in my mind, kind of meaningless. We all have a lot of data that we have to work with, so we have to figure out how to work with that data. But the term big data itself sort of isn't very helpful anymore. I think that machine learning, there's machine learning's kind of hitting that point to me a little bit. I feel like there's becoming a little bit of an overemphasis on machine learning. Not every analytic solution needs to be a self-learning algorithm, and in some cases it shouldn't be, and you don't want it to be. And I feel like there's starting to be sort of this overemphasis on machine learning as well that can be a little dangerous for folks. There's plenty of times where a simple regression model will serve just fine for a problem you need to solve. So I think that's an area as well that gets to be a little dangerous. In terms of tools, we like the open source tools. We're primarily an open source company here at Enova, from our front end systems all the way through our analytics operations. But I believe in sort of a healthy mix of some open source and perhaps some licensed tools if you need it. We have a couple licensed analytics software tools here as well, but more and more our teams are working in R and Python and using the open source tools as well. They've gotten to the point, nobody should be hesitant about using open source analytics tools these days. It used to be 15 years ago in my career, I think everyone was sort of skeptical about open source and all that, but no one should be skeptical anymore these days. It's the way to get things done, and we use a combination of open source and licensed software in our team here.
Interesting. I think so. Machine learning do send me to a kind of a philosophical perspective. So we hear a lot about. I think last week I was talking to a friend of mine, and there was a huge debate on how machine learning could kill the art, and sort of it brings the science. So how can sort of you and in many businesses, art is what is your differentiating factor, and now you're saying, hey, my science is, but now everyone knows science somehow. So then it's public and everyone knows your secret sauce. So what is your perspective on sort of how analytics is pulling sort of businesses towards more science, or how like what's your take on that?
Look, I think it will always be successful analytics will always be a mix of art and science, and I think that sounds a little cliche, but it's just reality, right? I mean, I think the art of it is really the business problem side of it, right? Understanding the business and the business impact of the solution is really the art of it. And then the science is then figuring out what you need to build to achieve that business outcome. I still think it's very much almost really an equal mix of those two things. Certainly when we look at how we build our teams and how we recruit folks to Enova, we want folks that bring both sides to the table. So we want folks that can bring good business acumen and can solve a business problem, but also have solid technical skills to back that up. If someone's a off the charts, data scientist, Python programmer, analyst, whatever, if they can't solve a business problem, we're not going to hire them, right? We won't let hard technical skills, that's not enough for us, right? It's not enough for us to be a member of our team. You have to bring some level of business understanding and business acumen to the table too, to really get on the team here and then be successful here at Enova. I don't see that changing, anytime soon, no matter how advanced we get on the science side.
No, I think definitely well put, and actually we are almost hitting our mark. So I'll not bug you more. So let me ask you one sort of final parting thought on that. So if sort of let's take a case for budding CAOs or budding entrepreneurial analytics leaders. So what are like 3 core things that you suggest to those guys or gals? Like what should they do to sort of succeed in this profession?
So a couple things. I think one is obviously you have to have sound technical understanding, right? You need to understand the types of analytics your team is using and how it's being used. Now, I don't write code anymore, and if I do, that's a problem. But our teams need to be doing that. But still, I need to be able to understand why they're choosing a certain methodology or approach to solving a problem, and help provide some guidance there. So I think understanding the technical work is important. Then I think obviously building that solid business understanding and relationship, right? So being able to engage, building the skills to be able to engage with your non-technical counterparts, right? So you can sit at, across the table from your CFO or your chief operations officer and understand what they need, what they're asking for, and how analytics can help solve that, right? So be able to have that business understanding and communication with the business. I would say the last thing is to get out and get active in your industry, right? So I've always been active on professional associations and industry associations. Obviously, in here, the Chicago chapter of the American Stats Association, being president of that, but getting active outside of your company in some type of an organization, whether it's analytics or industry oriented, to help give you that broader perspective, right? And understand the broader perspective of what the industry is facing and what the industry may need, and what say academics or academia or others are dealing with as well. And I think that really gives you that full perspective to bring that value to your company and bring that leadership to your company, right? You can build and run a good team. You can engage with your business owners and solve their problems effectively, and you understand the external environment as well, so that you can either address industry problems or help be a part of producing the next generation of analytics talent. So that would be my advice to someone who's looking to build a long-term career and get a leadership role in analytics.
No, I think that's couldn't have been put up better. So definitely, I do appreciate your time and loved chatting with you. And thank you so much for being so candid and sort of sharing your playbook, sharing sort of how a budding sort of analytics professional can do to learn things. Love to have you again on the show to discuss how things have been turning up. And thank you so much. I truly appreciate your time.
Yeah, no, you're welcome. I enjoyed it as well, and we should do a check-in in a few months. I'd be happy to have another conversation.
Thank you so much.
Okay, thank you, Vishal.
I thought I was sick of home, but actually I was homesick. Never really knew that I would have to grow up so quick. I'm so uncomfortable, don't know anybody here. Just a couple dudes that I met once, that's it. And I go into the booth feeling nervous. Got butterflies in my stomach like I'm so worthless. Is the mic on? I don't know how to work this. Inside I'm breaking down, I hope I'm not up on the